Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please, all courtesies duly observed. I'd like to thank the Daily Trust for inviting me to be a speaker on this very important topic. 2023, the politics, economy, and insecurity. As I listened to the chairman, listened to the governor of Borno State, listened to His Eminence, it looks like we're all converging towards the same conclusions. But I'll still share my thoughts. And as I do that, I have some caveats. One is that as I speak, this is to acknowledge that achieving all we want is going to take a lot of hard work. A lot of collective hard work from all of us and time. So as we talk about what needs to be done, please note that this is not a criticism of previous administrations or the current administration. It's a feedback of where we are as a country. I also like to use this opportunity to acknowledge all hardworking men and women who have in their own way reformed the country or tried to reform the country, are still trying to reform the country in different parts of the country, in public sector, in the private sector. And whatever I said here is to add to that discussion. And what I've tried to do is a quest for us to step back, assess, recalibrate, and forge ahead stronger and bolder. Changes in the development of Nigeria have preoccupied me as long as I remember, and the chairman has proudly announced my age. Oh, it was, okay, just kidding. For the last 59 years. And it continues to do so. Some changes over time gives one cause for hope, but I must say sometimes your enthusiasm does get dampened. But yet we trudge along because it is our country and a belief that we have the ability, if harnessed right, to be great, without a doubt. Now, I've been introduced as the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and some may have expectations of a discussion on how to grow revenue. I did that in December, and I suggest, and I probably share that speech. This is not going to be about that, even though it will touch on revenue. But let me talk a little bit about revenue. And that is the fact that even in the 2022 budget, there's been a call that revenue generation is one of the challenges of growing the economy. And it is one of the challenges. But sometimes when we look at revenue generation, we look at it from the point of view of collecting cash. We don't look at revenue generation from the point of view of building the base, building the economy, supporting business, creating the enabling environment that will now enable enterprise to prosper, enable individuals to have disposable incomes, which then forms the basis for tax. Revenue generation is also about expanding the economy, growing the level of transactions, particularly where you are taxing on transactions. The more you have those transactions, the more the turnover, the more you are able to grow revenue. So this is not going to be a discussion on revenue generation per se. It's going to really be, and has been given, my thoughts on growing the economy, but also has been said, we can't do that without also touching on insecurity or politics. A thought occurred to me yesterday because I've always been wondering, how do we talk about a topic that we talk about all the time? If I go through my notes, we've been talking about the economy for years on year, and sometimes actually talking about the same things. And so I said, to make it real, let me ask my 9-year-old what she feels about the economy. After all, she has more life than we do, or should have more life by the grace of God. And just talking to her impromptu, her thoughts were, the economy is not going well. And then she went on about how salaries, people are not being paid salaries. And this was just off the cuff. People are not happy. There's no fairness. Talked about how people put up their family members and those close to them in positions that they have no business to be in, rather than using competence to drive that, and those who've been there serving. But she also said one thing: I shouldn't rely just on what she says. Have I asked those around us what they think about the economy? And I found that actually the most interesting source of information that I've had for this presentation. And so I started the research. And without any variance or any difference in opinion, you could sense people deeply unhappy. Along different perspectives. I went one by one. But those perspectives, in a sense, tallied with also social media discussions, platforms, and talked about how people are now feeling a sense of hopelessness. And I have here, for example, excerpts from the budget, what has been said. And I must say that we've improved in terms of transparency of our budget reporting and what we need to do. But again, as I looked at this, I said, this is not going to be another discussion of how we're using our debt, what the inflation is. And I decided that the focus would be on how do we give hope for a better tomorrow to the people of Nigeria. And my first line here is very similar to what has been said, that we are again at a crossroad. And we have had many such crossroads over my 59 years of existence. But things are indeed not as bad as I've ever experienced now, especially in terms of the impact on the individual and a sense of where the country is headed. People admit that religion is now a fallback position because for them, the only person that they can hold on to is God. And insecurity itself is an outcome of a range of poor decisions over time that have also, beyond the other root causes, as has been identified by the governor of Borno State, but also poor decisions over time that have weakened the security forces' ability to act and defend territories. In fact, one of the persons I spoke to was in the security force. In fact, two of them. One was a child of an Air Force pilot who till now has been missing. And as a child and a product of the security, his attitude was, no one knows he exists. No one's bothered about my family. And for the security officer, the attitude is, if I die for the country, who would take care of my family? These are, they look simple, but very serious issues. And it reminded me of when, during the holidays, we traveled by road, and we passed through a number of buildings. And I remember taking a picture, and I shared it on the platform to say, what building is this? And I wish I could show it, but we'll just talk about it. Broken roofs, offices where water is pouring into. Reminded me of actually FRS when I started. And nobody could tell me what that building was. It was a police station, police barracks, where the police, those who work for the police, are expected to leave, no toilets, no bathrooms, and then leave that building to defend the people of Nigeria. The reality is that there's a lot of work to be done. We can blame here and blame there, but all I'm doing here is let's identify those things that need to be done, but let's also accept that we have a huge amount of work to do. And then in doing that, step back and say, but what's the strategy for doing it? Otherwise, we're going to go on and go round in circles. And I have here a few thoughts. I've been given only 15 minutes, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Perhaps in the dialogue I will. But these are one of my few thoughts, very broadly. Number one, what is the economy in the real sense? An economy, as may be defined in different places, the large set of interrelated production and consumption activities that aid in determining how scarce resources, you can never have enough resources, are located. In an economy, the production and consumption of goods and services are used to fulfill the needs of those living and operating within it. So the operating word is to fulfill needs. So what needs are we referring to? But I'll come to that. Another buzzword that we always use is globalization. And what, in my view, globalization brings, and it has its own strengths, is the ability to run a global economy so that production can be anywhere, to feed consumption anywhere, and meet the needs anywhere. And technology enables the ability to bridge territories instantaneously, bringing the world or Nigeria closer. But technology works more in a setting where the basics are already in place. And as we saw during COVID-19, certain people could continue going in school, but just a small fraction. Many could not continue because they are not connected, or data is expensive, or they do not have the gadgets. So even with globalization and with technology, issues that were already on the table, that we already needed to grapple with, is even making the gulf even wider. And therefore, you need to address this as quickly as possible. Now, for those in the management space, or those who have encountered this, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is as true today as it was 80 years ago in 1943, when he first wrote his paper, A Theory of Human Motivation. And in that hierarchy, at the very bottom are the physiological needs of food, water, warmth, and rest. The next layer of need is safety, before you now go up to the level of self-actualization. So technology is an enabler to drive these changes, but it cannot substitute for the leadership ability to provide food, water, warmth, and rest. Another thought I'd like to share is that most times when we discuss the economy, our reference point is how government raises revenue. And many a time I've made presentations and I have excerpts of the National Development Plan and so on. Very well put together, I must say. But the challenge has always been on execution. And perhaps, how do we structure the economy, our country, to drive this? And we talk about assumptions. We've talked about inflation. One of the speakers talked about inflation going down. But that's not what I heard. in terms of how it impacts the people. In today's market in Abuja, a mudu of white gari is 450 naira, from 150 naira in the last 2 years. A mudu of rice that they don't really like, they call it yama yama rice, is now about 850 naira a mudu. It was 150 naira the last 2-3 years. If you are lucky and you happen to get to market at the right time, palm oil, the original, is now 800 naira for a bottle from 200 naira. Things are tough. And it is so tough, and I must say it was even an eye-opener to me, and I'll come to my other thought process, which I'll close with, that I was told that, and I thought they were joking, and they say it's true. And that shows the level of disconnect. Because if I had not gone through that process, I would come here presenting and not be able to know. That in the villages, and perhaps even in certain cities, people actually just boil water to give the impression that they are cooking food. But they actually just want to drink water and not be held responsible for not providing for their family. As I look at our country and I say, what strategy? What structure? And I say this because for years, I have loved road travel. I learn more from road travel. But one thing road travel has done for me is to explore the vastness of Nigeria and the difficulty to sit at the center and drive change at the village level. It's tough for different reasons. We don't understand it. But it's also just too much work to be done. And we do not have the sheer number of people to do it. And I don't even think the Constitution expected the center to do that. The Constitution expected the center to set policy, to create an enabling environment, to drive incentives and grow the country through private sector and creating an enabling environment so that you attract money, you attract wealth. But I've thought about, but why has it been so difficult for us to do these things? And I'm beginning to, in my mind, say that perhaps within Nigeria itself, we have at least 5 civilizations or societies. The society at the village economy level, the typical town or city economy, the mega town, the Lagos, Abuja, Kano economy, different from the smaller city. And then those who've lived in African cities who bring to bear other African cities that have certain level of order and expect to replicate exactly that in Nigeria without considering our own realities. And then we have the Western style economy, which is influenced by the larger multilateral institutions, driven by their mindsets of how we should grow the economy. And in all this, the point at which your resources are, the point at which our people are, is at the village level. But what do we have at the village level? What do we have at that level? We have people who don't want to go to the village anymore. We have people who, once they leave the village, they don't want to go back. We have abandoned lands, farmlands, of our grandfathers, our ancestors, which have been taken over by people who see the value, but none of them are from the area, so they don't even understand. And sometimes it's just cash to take out, but not sustainable development, as has been said. Many years ago, and I'll leave with this, my great-grandfather, his name is Oviawe, didn't want my grandfather to go to school. And when I was told this story, it was more like, can you imagine your great-grandfather didn't want you to go to school? You know? But he fought it. And why did he fight it? He felt that what was going on was going to become the abandonment of the village. You know, in retrospect, he was right. Because what we have done is that we have now taken education, not the Nigerian style education, not a community-type education. Education that has come from a Western-style economy to educate those in the village to show as if the Western style is better. We do not know the resources we have. We do not value our strengths. And unfortunately, what insecurity is now doing, it's worsening it. Because people are now fleeing the villages. Those that were left growing the food are now fleeing because of insecurity, worsening the economic situation. And yet we know the root causes are that they too want justice. They too want opportunity. They too want opportunity and equality. So here we are moving round and round, not really making that mega change that this country is so capable of. And I think I could go into more details when we speak. Two things will be very critical to moving us forward. One is education. Our educational system at all levels, not the kind that we have been practicing, because the kind we have been practicing has just helped accentuate the divides. We hanker after things that we don't produce. We don't produce those things ourselves. And then we leave the country in the quest for basic needs with skills that the other countries like. But guess what? We plateau when we leave the country because we never reach that hierarchy of Maslow, which is self-actualization. And so we now come back to Nigeria hoping to get it, but we're not ready to accept those that have left because why did you leave us behind? And so we are therefore not collectively taking advantage of any strength. We let people go, we stay here, we have all issues that we're raging with, and at the end of the day, we're looking at our country, we're complaining, and nothing is going on. We have also not built an educational system that encourages thinking, that encourages productivity, that encourages creativity, innovation, and valuing what we have. We've not encouraged an educational system that encourages people to look at the village with pride. We do not have an educational system that recognizes that the greatness can be here. But that's because people don't see fairness, they don't see justice. Women will tell you, as a group, it's tough to be in Nigeria. It's tough to be in Africa. We have not built an educational system that values women in the real sense of it, that recognizes who they are, who the men are, and collectively work to build this country. We have not built an educational system that recognizes ages, that the young are just as valuable as the old, that the old are also just as valuable as those in the middle. We retire people, but we no longer value them, even though they have such a wealth of experience to give. We have not built an educational system that understands those words that we use that are important for us. Fairness, what is fairness? We interpret it the way we want. Justice, what is justice? We interpret it the way we want. Transparency, what is it? And when we say empowerment, there are so many degrees of empowerment. Our educational system, honestly, needs significant change. And last but not the least, to drive these changes do not just happen. Every reform, every transformation, every change starts with the leadership. One leadership, but beyond that one, collectively moving a whole swell of, because one person cannot do it alone. We need to begin to choose our leaders right. We need to move emotions because it's a shortcut game. It doesn't serve anybody right by using emotions to choose leaders. It doesn't. It comes back to haunt you. May we collectively move this country together. Thank you.